Hello everyone, I am Grainwolf, and this time I thought I'd start exploring some of the ancient people who were fantastically preserved, so much so that they were still wearing the clothing they were buried in, and in some cases, as we'll see, still had their hair styled. For those who haven't seen my recent video on the topic, the Nordic Bronze Age is dated roughly to between 2000 and 500 BC, making it one of the last regions in Europe to enter the era, and to leave it. In this video, I thought I'd start by introducing some of the oak coffin burials, as they're often known, of the women of the Nordic Bronze Age. In an upcoming video, I'll do the same for the men's burials, so keep an eye out for the next one. First up, I thought we'd take a closer look at what we know about the Egtved girl. One summer day in 1370 BC, a teenage woman, somewhere between 16 to 20 years of age, was laid in an oak log coffin beneath what is now known as the Storhøy barrow, near Egtved, Denmark. In her coffin, which sat on a base made of piled stones, those who buried her placed a number of objects they thought would be useful to her in the afterlife. She had been laid on top of a large ox hide. She wore a short woolen tunic which came to above the navel with elbow-length sleeves and a short string skirt. Her clothes were similar to the bronze statues of the era. Around her hips, a woolen belt held a large bronze plate, often referred to as a sun disk. The disk, a common feature in the graves of women in the Danish Bronze Age, is thought to be a symbol of the sun, and is decorated with repeating spiral motifs. By her head, a woven hairnet and a hair comb was placed, and a small birch bark box was put by her shoulder containing an awl and bronze pins. By her feet, a birch bark container which once contained some kind of beverage, perhaps alcoholic, was placed, and beside this lay a small woolen bundle containing the cremated remains of a 5 or 6 year old. What relation this child had to the Egtved girl is unknown, with theories ranging from a family member to human sacrifice. This concept of a human sacrifice being included in the graves of the women of the Danish Bronze Age isn't unique. In another contemporary burial, the coffin contained the ashes and burnt bones of another person, this time an adult who was placed by the feet of the woman whose grave it was. We can't be sure who the child in the Egtved girl's grave was, however, given the age range of 5 to 6, and the young age of the Egtved girl, it's not believed it could be her child. The Egtved girl herself was well travelled, and was born and grew up somewhere other than Denmark. Possible locations include southern Germany in the Black Forest, southwestern Norway, or southern Sweden. In the years before her death, she had spent a vast amount of time travelling through varying landscapes. Because of this, it's often believed that the Egtved girl was viewed as special, perhaps a ritual figure, or, at the very least, a woman of status. Before the coffin lid was closed and the mound erected over her grave, someone placed flowering yarrow, a white summer flower, with her, and a beer made from wheat, cowberries, honey and bog myrtle. She remained within her barrow until the 1920s, when a farmer attempted to clear the mound, which her thought was simply a refuse pile. In a summer sometime between 1382 and 1129 BC, a 18 or 19-year-old woman was laid to rest. Her grave goods, and the finery which she wore, indicate strongly that she was a woman of high status. She wore a short-sleeved blouse, similar in cut to those seen in the other contemporary Bronze Age graves, which was decorated at the shoulders and neckline with a carefully made embroidery. She wore a long skirt-like garment which was gathered at the waist by a woolen belt, which covered her to below her ankles. She wore large spiral gold earrings and was buried with a fine hair comb. What makes the scribe-struck woman so special is the way that her hair, which was near perfectly preserved, was styled. She had ash blonde hair which was kept very long enough to be styled in such a complex manner. As the National Museum of Denmark describes, all of the hair is combed forward over a hair pad. A woolen cord is afterwards bound around the hair, which then is plaited across the forehead from temple to temple, like one plaits a wreath of flowers. Finally, the hairdo was covered with a hairnet made from horsehair. She was also buried with a woolen cap also made, using the sprang technique used in the making of her hairnet. The Ølby woman was buried at some time between 1400 to 1200 BC. Her grave seems to have been rich as that of the Egtved girl, however not as well preserved. She had lived and died within the borders of modern-day Denmark, unlike the Egtved girl or Skridstrup woman who seemed to have been born further abroad. Unfortunately, due to the lack of preservation within her grave, not much was able to be recovered other than what was made of metal. However, because of this, we know at least that she wore a string skirt in the same design as the Egtved girl. However, the one worn by the Olby woman was decorated with bronze rings and fittings, due to the survival of wool fragments and metal fixings. Borum Esjøy is one of Denmark's most famous monumental Bronze Age barrows. Excavations in the late 19th century uncovered 3 oak log coffins. Among them, a middle-aged woman whose skeleton and grave furniture have been central to Bronze Age reconstructions. The woman of Borum Esjøy was laid to rest in an oak coffin sometime between 1351 to 1345 BC. She was older than the others we've covered so far, aged between 50 to 60 years old. She was buried in similar fashion, however, wearing the woolen blouse and long skirt seen in other burials. She also had a wool cap, hairnet and 2 belts which were all made of wool. At her midsection lay the bronze sun disk seen in the other women's graves, 2 smaller versions known as tutuli, a neck ring of bronze, arm bracelets, spiral rings to be worn on her fingers, a dagger, a number of brooches and a horn comb. From her bones we can tell, however, that, despite the status of her grave, she had led a life of action and work. Osteological examinations revealed clear signs of the Borum Esjøy woman having robust muscles, in line with someone who had undertaken physical work for her entire life. It seems that whoever she was, she shared in the hard work that Bronze Age life demanded, and on top of this maintained a strong social standing. I can anticipate some comments regarding the disturbance of these burials. After reading up on them, however, in the case of the Nordic Bronze Age at the very least, the excavation and recovery of these ancient people's remains might have been the best course of action. In the years between 1700 and 1900, many of these mounds had been destroyed by roadworks, or worse, raided by treasure hunters, who drilled holes in the coffins and sent in metal rakes and literally pulled the contents to one end of the coffin. So many ancient graves were defiled this way, and so much was lost to the actions of these careless individuals who were only interested in gold. In response to this, some antiquarians were given permission to excavate, in an attempt to beat the treasure hunters and preserve this heritage for the nation, and now for the world. We're lucky that the few graves that have survived did so, as these ancient people have quite literally revealed stories of Bronze Age life and tradition that we would have otherwise never known. I personally feel that it is important that we remember these women as best we can. The purpose of the mound was to make their presence felt even after their passing, so from that I interpret that they would have wanted us to remember and talk about them. I'd say it's important to us to know where we come from. A rootless tree falls after all. I hope you found this video and topic as interesting as I do, and that I've done these ancient women justice in my retelling of their lives and deaths. As I said earlier, keep an eye out for my next video. I have been Grey and Wolf, and thanks for watching.